We are live.
Yes, we are live, and welcome to Michael Harris, Gary Stone, person to person, here on the internet and various other platforms. Hey, Gary, everything good on your side of town?
Yeah, things are good. Kind of quiet today for 4th of July. So we're I was thinking there was a parade this morning, probably here in Houston somewhere, but I just never found it on the television to see it. Did you? Was there a parade?
I wasn't looking for one. Was there a parade, James? James White is with us.
Hello, Michael. Hello, Gary. Not to my knowledge. I think there's going to be a live show of festivities at Tinsley Park later, but not a parade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you remember Eleanor Tinsley, don't you, Gary?
Sure. Yeah.
Even though you lived in Pasadena.
Yeah,
Now,
I remember her.
Now, I know you don't remember James White. Well, maybe you do because you worked in Magic, and you worked in Magic for a while, didn't you, James?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so what was that while, and when was that while?
Oh, I worked there when they started out, 1977. I was there till about 1980. So, yeah, I was the first news director they had.
Well, James, you didn't come after me, baby. What's up? What's up? What happened?
You were already making plenty of money where you were. You were stationary.
Well, I was there in 1984. So I just missed
you. Was there in 84?
Yeah, I was there in 1984. Monty Lang and Jeff Silver and Monty's wife, they all worked there.
Yeah, I came there in 1977 when it started. Was playing nothing but music for a while, and I had about 5 folks to work on the news department with, and that was it.
Yeah, James was my first mentor, I guess you could say, on the professional side. He was assistant news director. Ed Shannon was news director. S.E. Vernell, Jesse was there. Robert Earl, was it? Yeah, Robert Earl Maddox. Yeah, Robert Maddox. And when back in 72, when I came there, James went to Texas College in Tyler.
And, there you go.
Yeah. And, Gary has been all over the world.
Well, my youngest son lives in Tyler right now, working for CBS and Tegna. So I go to Tyler every once in a while, but
that's where you are now. You may have to speak up a little.
No, I wasn't. I just go there now to visit my son and his family, but I never worked in Tyler.
Yeah.
In 77, I was in Dallas working as a salesman at WFAA AM radio. It was news talk. We competed with what is it? The KRLD, I guess. And in 79 is when I came to Houston, started KLAT 1010 AM, the second Spanish radio station in Houston behind KLVL, and eventually ended up at Magic in 1984.
Well, I started out at KZEY in Tyler, Texas. I had graduated from Texas College at the time. A friend of mine was a disc jockey, and if you recall, I'm sure you do, Gary, disc jockeys hated reading the news. It was all about rip and read. And so I used to hang around the station, and a friend of mine said, "You can read. Well, why don't you just help me out?" And I did, and that's how I started out into the news. I actually majored in sociology, and I stumbled into news. It was one of those things. And I was waiting on my wife. She was going to graduate in several months, and we were going to march the following May together, and all that took place. And then I found out she's going to have our baby. And so when I graduated and we came back to Baytown, Houston, I needed to get a job. Well, what I had going for me at the time was radio. I said, well, let me try that. That's how I got into radio in Houston. And started out at KYOK, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, he met me, and I changed his life.
You didn't save his life. Yeah, let's get this straight. You didn't save his life. You changed his life. Okay.
Oh, is that what he says? Well, Michael more or less changed my life
No.
more than I think I changed his.
Oh no, you changed my life, James. You spent time working with me. You were my mentor. Ed may have said, "Okay, I'll give him a shot," but you're the one who did the training and gave me the assignments and the opportunity to learn. James Gary later went on to work for mayor of the city of Houston. He was one of his aides. What was your title for Mr. McCon, Mayor McCon?
I was in communications with McCon. I also later worked for Kathy Whitmire, the first female mayor. But backing up for a second in radio, you said I stayed. No, I was kind of like a bouncing ping pong ball.
Okay.
I left KYOK, went to KPRC, all news radio, worked there for a couple of years or so. Came back to KY as a news director. I was probably the youngest news director they ever had. And then left KY, went to KTRH, all news, and worked there. And then, of course, from there, Magic in 1977, when it hit the air, I was there as their news director and hired about 4 or 5 people for the news department. And we did some great things over there. And afterwards, that's when I started working for city government. After I left Magic, I worked at the city for about 20 years and retired.
Okay.
So what was Magic before it was Magic?
It was Magic. You mean what radio station it was?
Yeah, what was the format? Station
it was well, of course, it was the signal was coming out of Clear Lake, and at the time it was a partial all news operation just for a little while. It was an easy listener before that time. It was really it wasn't Magic. I've forgotten the call letters. It's been so long ago. But then Jim Maddox came along and turned it into Magic 102, and we had a real good time there for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, so both of you guys worked at Magic. Y'all just simply didn't know each other. Gary came along later and was their sales manager for a while.
Right.
Yeah. Now
I was there from 77 to 1980, and then afterwards left Magic and started my own news company, Houston News Company, along with several partners. We were out in the River Oak Shopping Center and had about 10 clients, various radio stations, the local TV station, 11, 13, and 39. So I did that for a while, and then afterwards went to the city and stayed there until retirement 20 years later.
So James, who was the most famous person you interviewed as a news person, as a newsman?
I did a lot of that, believe it or not. I probably, just about in the early 70s, just about anybody you could name, I had an opportunity because Houston was a hot spot. And a lot of people were coming in and out of our city all the time. Probably one of the first people that I interviewed in that category was Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens. I interviewed Jesse Owens several times. Of course, he was the gold medalist, 4-time gold. Dick Gregory, the comedian and activist. Alex Haley. I got a story about Alex Haley. I'll tell you about that later. He, of course, was the author of Roots and was also the one who wrote the autobiography of Malcolm X. Alex Haley he was something else. Jane Kennedy Isaac. Y'all remember her?
Yeah, she married Leon Isaac
Absolutely.
Kennedy.
That was your protege over at KCOH.
Yeah.
And, of course, Jacques Cousteau, the Frenchman. He was the oceanographer, filmmaker, and the author. Muhammad Ali. I have a story about Muhammad Ali as well. Muhammad Ali, after he became a conscientious objector and decided that I'm not going to the army, later he was filming in Houston out on San Jacinto Street, which was at the time the admission station where all the guys being inducted into the Army would go. But this time, Muhammad Ali used that same facility to do his life story. I was standing at the door with my 5-year-old son at the time. And when Ali came in the door, my son would punch Ali in his side. And he was thinking it was me that hit him. Turned around and he was getting ready to knock me out. That was that reflex of a boxer. And he looked and saw my 5-year-old son. He smiled, tugged him underneath the chin, and then he went on and continued with his filming. But I'm glad he didn't think that was me. It's not me.
And that's when they were filming The Greatest, right?
But a lot of people. I met Prince when he was 19 years old. I didn't know what a Prince was until all the ladies at the station I was working was talking about how excited they were that Prince was going to come and be a part of our celebration we were going to have. And of course, I met him, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah.
Ambassador Young. One of the most exciting things, Gary, since you led me down this trail, that I had an opportunity was when Howard Hughes flew from Acapulco, Mexico to Houston, his last trip, because he was ill. Do you recall that? Is he there?
Yeah, he's here. He's just trying to remember if he was in.
Okay. But Howard Hughes was ill. He flew back to Houston to Methodist Hospital. And we were down in the basement of Methodist Hospital. We, as in most folks locally who were in the local news pool, they were there, along with a lot of ABC, CBS, and Life magazine and all of them. I mean, after all, this is Howard Hughes. And Dr. Joseph Yehimchek, who was a medical examiner, a very famous medical examiner, as a matter of fact, came to the door. We were in the basement, and he made the announcement to the world that Howard Hughes was dead. Well, yours truly was there. And that was really something. But what was really something about that, here it is, you have the most elusive man in the world. Nobody had seen him for years and years and years. He was on the other side of the door where Dr. Yehimchek walked out, where all the reporters were waiting to hear what he had to say. And we wanted to go inside and see Howard Hughes. No, you can't go out inside and see Howard. And of course, he proceeded to make the announcement that Howard Hughes had died. And that was something else. I'll always remember that. Jim Brown, Ronald Reagan, even when he was running for office, First Lady Ford, even before she announced that she was an alcoholic. We got an kind of a glimpse of that one evening when her Secret Service agent would not allow us in the media to approach her because she was acting very irregularly. It turned out later that she was an alcoholic, and they didn't want anybody to know that or make that announcement. And later she got treatment, and as they say, she founded the Betty Ford Clinic and done some wonderful things as a result of that. Anyway, I could go on and on and on.
Yeah, Gary, we were involved, and we were doing lots of things, but of course, the major media, the majority media, I guess tended not to find the things that we were doing as newsworthy.
Well, this opportunity came about primarily, Mike, because you're right. We did a lot at KY, for example, and we can talk about that in a minute, especially when it came down to information and informing the community about things. But as an outside reporter for these all-news radio stations that I had an opportunity to work for, a lot of things unfolded that I probably otherwise would not have had an opportunity to meet or to do. There was something that happened in Louisiana, early 1970s, at a place called Dexterhand, Louisiana. Dexterhand, Louisiana is just outside of New Orleans. I was there on vacation, my wife and I got a call from my boss who said, you need to go down there because there's just been a tanker that collided with what is that? what is it called? It was a car when they carried cars across the river from one side of the bank to the other side. These guys were on their way to work early in the morning.
Yeah, Gary was trying to tell you what it was.
The tanker of this ship collided with that ferry, and they had about 78 cars located on that. All these people and everything, and they went down to the Mississippi River, and they drowned. It turned out that the captain of the tanker ship had been drinking, and so he really didn't see this vessel and caused that collision, and all those folks died. That was just unbelievable. To think that at the bottom of the murky Mississippi, you could hear these people screaming, trying to, find themselves, but it wouldn't be. They lost their lives, and that was pretty crazy. So, as I said, there were a number of things that I otherwise would not have had an opportunity to do, just living a normal life. But a reporter's life can be very unusual, depending on the circumstances you face.
Gary, you were trying to say something?
I was going to say that that ship or that vessel was a ferry. It's just a ferry.
Yeah, it was a ferry that carried 78 cars. 77 of them went down in the Mississippi, and 77 people in it all perished.
J. Thomas Smith wishes you all a very happy Independence Day. Tom Robertson says hello. So does Simpson.
J. Thomas and I worked at Magic in the initial days. Of course, he was still around for a while, even long after I left.
Well, the reason I wanted to have this little mixture here is to talk about the importance of having Black media.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess as we have moved forward, it seems like it's kind of being forgotten, that there is not this push that we used to have about getting news and information out and having our people, our representatives actually heard. And I guess you could say listened to, or given time to explain from whence we came. It just seems that the media has Gary, you're the Caucasian in this particular group. I guess we have an Oreo cookie here, James and I, and you in the middle. But
a little smushed.
but as you watch the news, do you think that we are fairly represented?
Well, I would say that I see a lot of the anchors being Black or Hispanic, or primarily though seemingly Black, and then they're the ones that's doing the reporting. I don't know if the things they're reporting is being dictated by a white journalist or news director versus how much they're able to cover Black issues. But it's not evident to me that Black news is on the decline, or that white news is on the going up, or Black news going down. I don't have a perspective on that. It seems like I see a lot of Black stories. I see a lot of Black anchors. So to me, it just looks just like it's proportionate to the population.
The types of stories, then, Gary, do you see very many stories about the good things that we've done, our accomplishments, or is it
primarily negative news? They're always looking for negative news. They may be interviewing a Black person that can't get up and down because their elevator doesn't work. That's been a big story of late. They interview people because the trash is not being picked up by the city, or and a lot of times those people are Black. Not always, but sometimes, because I guess there's all different kinds of people that live in the neighborhood, depending on where we're talking about, for what news comes out from those various communities. And and when you have a news cycle as filled with as much news as they want to cram in there, a lot of your, I don't want to say mundane, but more of your normal stories that might be talked about get cut out or don't get time on the air, and they want to take the most negative, the one that hits the most amount of people, be it local or national, because that's what causes people to watch the news, and they get ratings and they get viewership as a result of it. So I don't know how much thought has gone into, we need to do more black stories because we're talking too much about white stories. I don't know how much that happens in the newsroom. Maybe James has some experience with that.
Well, I have experience on both sides of the mic. I was fortunate, if some would say. As I said, I was an outside reporter at the general market radio station that I worked at, and I was assigned to the federal courthouse, the county courthouse. That was an anomaly when I was a reporter. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, started out at KYOK and became their news director, and was heavily involved in backstation and recognizing the demographics, the audience that we were dealing with in terms of primarily black. So, as I say, I have it on both sides of the spectrum. And what I found was that even when I was at the general market radio stations, being an outside reporter, I still, quote, did a lot of, quote, black stories, if you will. But I also did general market stories as well, because I had a lot of flexibility. And while I was out there on the streets and they would come available, my station didn't have a problem. An example of what I'm talking about. When state representative at the time, Mickey Leland, proposed a bill that prescription medicine, this was when he was in the legislature in Texas, prescription medicines should be purchased, or should be a lot less expensive for individuals, since folks who were folks who could not afford that medicine needed to get a break. Now, initially, it was a problem with some folks didn't want prescription medicine to be cut in half in terms of its cost, but it was important that folks who didn't have finances or didn't have income got their medicine. And Mickey proposed that this legislation would be offered in Austin, which is, by the way, some of the first time medication the costs had been cut anywhere in the country was here in Texas. And I remember when Mickey called into this particular station I was working for, they'll be nameless. And the folks were saying, well, he's a radical. We don't want to do anything that he says, blah, blah, blah. And we don't want to talk about this. There were two other people besides me who looked like me, worked at that station. And we said, oh, yeah, we're going to put this on the air because this is important to the general public. And this man is proposing a bill that is going to help out tens and thousands of people in this state. So I'm saying that there may have been a time or a point where people had personal opinions about people. And because of the legislation that they were trying to propose, which would help a lot of people, they would say, oh, no, we were not going to do that. Said, oh, yeah, we are going to do that. And we ended up doing it. As they say, the rest is history.
James.
What you call generic medication.
I have to interrupt you here and remind you that great big beautiful bill was passed today.
Oh, yeah. I know that great big beautiful bill was passed.
And that great big beautiful bill is going to take away many of those benefits that you're talking about.
I understand. I do understand. But the question was, what was the experience of and what was the advantage, I'll say it that way, of dealing with a predominant black audience at the time, and what approach was being made. It was more about supplying them with information and making sure that there were things that we could benefit from, we would report on those stories. That's what we did a lot of at KYOK.
Okay, and
you recall that.
Yeah, and that was the second part of my question. Are we doing that today? Because I am so disappointed in the fact that our media, minority media especially, just seems to be disappearing.
Well, in this day and age, especially in our city, we don't have any, with the exception of you guys, Mike, we don't have any, quote, black media informing and reaching our community like we did in the 60s and the 70s. And even in the 60s and the 70s, as you recall, it was in the latter part of the 60s when they started organizing news departments at the quote black radio stations.
Mm-hmm.
And the objective was for information purposes. And we stuck to that. We made sure our community was informed about different legislation that was being passed, how they would benefit from it, and so forth and so on. You recall Grassroots. Grassroots was a Wednesday night community development program that we would, I said development, but a community objective program where we would allow audiences to call in and speak with congressmen and city councilmen and so forth about the latest issues so that they could stay abreast. We did a lot of educating when we were at the all-black radio stations. At the general market, it took for granted that people would know certain things. We didn't take that for granted when we were at the all-black radio stations. We made it our mission to make sure people were abreast of issues that came up through city council and county commissioners court and federal courts and criminal courts and so forth. That was our objective, to educate. And we did that.
Gary, looks like you're thinking about something.
Well, my comment is that the industry has changed. You know, the fall of talk and news on radio has diminished over the last couple of decades. And now people get it through streaming. They get it through podcasts like this, or they get it just from social media and from television news that covers local stories. Radio is not the main source for Black community stories or Hispanic stories or any other kind of terrestrial radio is now playing commercials and playing music and trying to have a few personality type disc jockeys that tell jokes and entertain. The value of the local news story seems to not get as much kind of ratings that it may have used to get. And I know years ago, I dropped having newscast on an hourly or 2020 basis.
Yeah, let me hold on. Oh, sorry to interrupt. I have Claude Cummings who has joined the conversation. Sorry about that, Gary, and I was answering the phone. Just want to make sure he can hear us. Mr. Cummings, are you there?
Oh, I can hear fine.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. Hi, Gary.
Hi there. Yeah.
And James White.
And James White. James, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Doing okay. Busy.
Well, thank you for taking out of your busy schedule. I had lunch today with Mr. Cummings. He was at the church did a 4th of July celebration over there. We played bingo and the dogs had a good time, Tidbit and Polo. And we saw family members and friends and all that. Were you able, I don't know if you've been able to hear any of the conversation thus far, but we were talking about.
For that, I have to clean up behind those who came out to enjoy, Michael.
Yeah, well,
I'm just not getting on. I apologize.
I know it's no problem. You know, we were just talking about how active we used to be in the past, and I was trying to lead up to how can we get that back, or is it possible to get it back today? Because they just passed that great, big, beautiful bill that's going to be taking away Medicaid from poor people, disabled people, etc. Just cutting millions and billions of dollars for the poor, while the rich. And Gary, I know you spent so much money, you may not be technically, but then you might be again. Who knows? Look at him smiling. He doesn't want anyone to know.
Notice the stock market does on Monday. I bet you it goes up. I bet that's a safe bet that it's going to react to the signing of the big, beautiful bill, and the stock market will rally as a result of that. And who knows, it might go up 1,000 points. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
But how's that going to help me, Gary? How's that going to help?
I didn't say it was, you're screwed. So sorry. You got to have investments, or you got to have a 401k or an IRA. And, if you don't have those things, then, you're not going to benefit from these renewal of these tax cuts and the savings they're trying to do, in spite of the fact that they're going to be adding to the deficit. So, and then I feel bad if it's true to the degree that is being reported. You had to question all these reports, that 9 or 10, 11 million people are going to lose their Medicaid. If that's true, because they have to be, in order to qualify to still get it, they have to show they can work, what it is, 80 hours a month, and that they have low income, they may still be able to get their Medicaid. But a lot of people may lose it. And I just don't know how many that actually is, that's going to be, and this is phased in over a little bit of time, I understand. So you're not going to have an immediate feeling of it, which I guess allows people to be more passive about it until it's too late and they're either not getting any of their Medicaid or a small portion of it from what they're used to, which really hurts, handicapped people and people that truly can't work. So their thought is that they want to get freeloaders off of Medicaid and get them back to work again like they should, rather than just staying home. But there should be some cutouts for people that are severely handicapped that are not capable of working. So maybe there's still some things that the legislature or the Congress will do as a result of some of that. So it's hard to say how bad it's.
You bring up a very interesting point, because that's exactly what I've been wondering about. By the way, they said it was going to be 17 million people. Of course, nobody knows. There's going to be, lose their Medicaid coverage. And then you got the rural hospitals that's going to be impacted and so forth. But the idea that those on Medicaid should be able to go to work. I constantly ask myself, what about those persons who can't work? That's typically what the idea is. But they're painting everybody with a broad brush, saying that there's a lot of fraud and abuse in the Medicaid situation. Now, certainly, in any situation, there's going to be some fraud and abuse. It's called human nature. It's called the sin nature of man. But 17 million people, that's going to be very devastating in terms of the healthcare industry and how that's going to impact so many senior citizens, as you pointed out, nursing home individuals who are now relying on Medicaid. It's going to be interesting, and it's going to take a little while before all of this unravel and we see the impact in the market as far as that is concerned.
Mr. Cummings. But, I'm sorry, James. I was trying to.
No, that's okay. No, my God, everything I've heard so far is absolutely correct. But I want to address what you initially told me about not getting active.
Mm-hmm.
What is it going to take to get more people active? And my staff tells me all the time, I've always got stories, but I want to tell y'all a quick story. I gave my son, while he was in high school, my truck. And one day I came out and he had the hood up and he was looking under the hood. And I walked up to him and I watched him for about 5, 6, 7 minutes. Just look at the hood, look under the hood. And I said, well, son, what do you think is wrong? He said, well, Dad, I think it's the alternator of the battery. And I said, okay. And then he turned around and looked back in for another 2 or 3 minutes. And finally, I tapped him on his shoulder and said, well, son, one thing for sure. It ain't going to fix itself. Go get some tools. And he said, you'd be surprised. He said this in a sermon not too long ago, how much of an impact just saying that has had on his life. Because you understand when he runs into trouble, when things are going wrong, he's got to address them quickly. The problem is, in my opinion, and especially when it comes to people of color, they think that there's going to be some super person that's going to drop out of the sky that's going to help this situation we're in now. And that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We have got to save ourselves from this craziness that is taking place from this administration. And young people, to be quite honest with you, in my opinion, just based on what I have been able to read so far, are probably going to be hurt more than anybody. But certainly losing Medicaid, the SNAP programs, those are going to affect all communities, not just communities of color. It will mainly impact us, but it's going to actually impact all of us. So it is so important that everyone understand that we have got to get involved to stop this craziness. Our democracy, in my opinion, in some places is on life support. We have a governor in this state that's in a wheelchair. That's making it more difficult for people in a wheelchair like him to vote. Mm-hmm. You know, we've got to we have got to start standing up boldly and speaking out on some of this craziness that is taking place, and encouraging everyone we can to register and to get out and vote. Because if we don't do that, our democracy is very much on the line.
And you pointing out something very important in terms of participation. 90 million people did not vote in the last election.
That's correct.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
That's exactly right. We lost because they didn't vote. And I think the Democratic Party should make sure that that people understand that this wasn't a blowout. I think it was a couple of million votes or something like that she lost by.
Yes.
And so Congressman Ben Thompson called me today. He had a young man that was working on his daughter's internet service and telephone service at our home. 22, and he wanted me to talk to him because first of all, he didn't know that I'm his union president. He's black and he is a member of the union. That was the good news because that's the first thing I asked him. But 22 years old, has never voted, and has no interest in getting involved in politics. And Benny asked me if I could just talk to him about the importance of voting and the importance of understanding that those things that are closest to you adversely affect you sometimes more than things like what is taking place with this big, beautiful bill. And so we have got to figure out how we get in the heads of these younger people. And I will tell all of you this, that I'm done spending money with these super PACs. I was elected 2 years ago. My predecessor, as president of CWA, had made commitments that's unbelievable. We gave $2 million to the Senate Majority PAC. We spent $1.5 million with this Freedom Fund, I think the Biden PAC, and none of those organizations did anything to address the negativity that came about, against Biden and the vice president. They didn't address it at all. Not one time did they address that trans ad that I saw, and I campaigned in 21 states. That I saw every night before I went to bed. It was the last damn ad I saw. And so as president of CWA, I've made it very clear. And I've also made it clear to the AFLC, our executive board in Washington, that we need to message to people ourselves. Who is better to message to working people? Because working people are who killed us in this election. Who's better? And low-wage workers killed us. Who's better to message to workers in this country but unions? And so there is a lot we have got to do in our local communities to make sure that come next year, we're able to take back the House. It's going to be a little bit more difficult in the Senate, but I think we can easily take back the House with some of this craziness that is taking place, so we can stop this craziness, that is coming out of the Trump administration.
Well, since we have our own personal crazy, Gary, although Gary's not crazy, but he is officially rich, right, Gary?
Just say that I have financial freedom as a retired person.
What can we do to get? Oh, okay. Tell me why billionaires, multi-billionaires need a tax cut. Could you tell me, in all of your
Well, not being a billionaire, it's hard to say, but the tax cut actually goes beyond just the billionaires, and the more money that companies make as a result of tax cuts, even if they don't put it back into their employees, which you'd like to think they could then give bigger raises to their employees, because you're a billionaire, you probably have some kind of a business. You're just not I'm sure there are retired billionaires, but I think a lot of them are still working for whatever reason. They still keep working even with that amount of money. Our chairman of the board was a billionaire at Univision, and he worked all the way up into his 80s. So he certainly didn't need to. He could have retired 20, 30 years ago before he passed away, but didn't choose to do that. Maybe that's common amongst billionaires to stay in the game, and they have a lot of freedom in their time. When you are a billionaire, nobody's looking over your shoulder too closely as to whether you're putting in your 40 hours or not. But that said, I think it's as much as the Democrats say that it's tax cuts for billionaires, it's tax cuts more so, I think, for corporations to profit more. And that causes the stock market to go up. That benefits, again, anybody that has a 401k or an IRA. And if you're of the group of people that don't have those things, you need to get that, or you're just left out of the race to be able to build wealth. And the only thing you have at that point is perhaps any real estate that you own, and that grows slowly compared to what IRAs and other investments grow. So you're disadvantaged if your only ability to build wealth is through real estate. Generally speaking, I'm sure that there are times, my mother benefited from buying a house at $50,000 and sold it for $800,000. So she had a developer come in and buy her house from her in the whole block. In fact, 2 city blocks.
You said she bought a $50,000 that she sold for $800,000.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the hood, was it?
No, it was 2 acres in Richardson, Texas, and all those people that lived in those 2 city blocks, which is kind of like an incorporated city within itself inside of Richardson, made a lot of money, except that the company that gave them all that money went bankrupt and never built anything. And the property all sat there vacant for a decade or more. So probably still is vacant. I don't know if anything's been developed there or not. But I'm just saying, real estate's a tough way to make and build wealth. And I know a lot of minorities, Hispanics mostly that I know, believe in building real estate, and they don't believe in the stock market. Doctors that I know that are Brazilian or from Honduras or such, haven't believed in the stock market, believed in real estate, and haven't done that well. So I don't do any real estate. I do all stock market with all the money that I made from the stocks that I owned in the company, where we were privately owned and then publicly owned, and then we sold it for billions of dollars. So that's the way to build wealth, in my estimation. If you could have bought Amazon 20 years ago, or Microsoft, or Google, or you name it, of these companies, you'd be very wealthy. But then people that don't have money can't do it. And so you keep getting left out of the American dream of how to build wealth and to be able to have a legacy of building wealth to pass on to your family, to make it easier for them to be able to do what the matriarch of the family did, to be able to build wealth. So that's who I am. I'm the matriarch for my family, and I'm going to do my best to pass it on to my sons and their wives and their families and our grandkids, so they can be ahead of being able to build wealth for themselves and for their families and their grandkids.
Okay, but Gary, I do have to ask this question. Since you know that for years we were left out of the loop, that we were not included. Yes, baby, it's been like that. And to a degree, it still is. How do we, those of us who have been systematically left out of the equation, and what we have been taken from us? Look at, P. Diddy. Oh, P. Diddy.
Well, I mean, you have to be a unique person within the Black community, Black athletes, Black music artists, they make millions of dollars. I mean,
Yeah,
but
but their people take it away from them too, Gary. These contracts that they've had many of these guys sign, and then of course they have to watch out for the women and the babies. They be going hard at these guys, and many of them ain't the sharpest needles in the stack, and they lose plenty of money. So
the grandson of our company, he has hundreds of millions of dollars, and his family, meaning his brother, his two brothers, and his sister, they all have hundreds of millions of dollars. And we used to have a little saying that they were part of the Lucky Sperm Club, because they got born into a family that had an opportunity to build wealth, even though they had to do it the hard way. They did it from scratch. They didn't do it and just walk in and here you got $1 zillion. But the grandson had to build the company that then he can pass on to his son to have hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever the amount of money is. So, to be able to get wealthy, to have financial freedom is an exception. It's not the norm for anybody, for everybody. There's a lot of, Caucasians, white people that are poor, and you just don't have to be black and Hispanic to be poor. I have a son that I consider to be poor, but because he can't hold down a job and he can't make more than $20,000-$30,000 a year. So, what do you do for somebody like that? How do they get out of that? Well, he has to have a father like me. And if you don't have somebody that has any sort of established financial abilities, then, it's very hard to get out of that hole.
Well, let's hear from Claude.
No, my I don't quite know how to answer that other than this. I know a lot of oligarchs and owners of sports teams that are disturbed about what's taking place in this administration. I've had some personally say to me that we should be helping those who are in need. So I don't think we can assume at all that all rich people are okay with this, regardless of what kind of money they have. Because I have talked with some who have made it very clear to me that they are not happy, and in some cases, I think are interested in maybe having a conversation about how do we move forward. So, to be honest with you, we're going to need their help because it's going to take money. It is going to take money. And I don't know if any of you all know this. I think Mike just found this out either yesterday or I can't remember, Mike, when I mentioned it to you, that I am fortunate enough to have supported the new DNC chair. And so he made an appointment of me to the executive committee. I'm the first Black male to serve on the DNC, the National DNC Executive Committee, since the 80s. And one of my responsibilities, as I understand, would be to look at contracts, how contracts are given to, who they're given to, the type of work that's going to be done. And I am one that believes that the Democratic Party has lost their way. Now, I've got to speak from a union perspective because that's what I am, a union leader, right? They've lost their way with working people because they've become so focused on social issues instead of working people issues. And that's just the truth. And I have said that. I have no problem with people who are in these different organizations. I could care less about who people love. I could care less about that. But I've said very clear that those things cannot be our main focus. We've got to support those in many communities. To be quite honest with you, the Democratic Party is always going to be the big tent. But one thing for sure, they don't need to be our lead issues that need to be addressed. That kind of need to be addressed. I can't think his name that worked with Obama and led the DNC at one time. I've forgotten his name. But he said it's the economy, stupid, that you have to deal with. And nothing was done for, in my opinion, to address the needs of these workers that were getting these checks from Trump during COVID. I don't know. I know Michael knows this. I don't know if the rest of you know this, but I actually flew with President Biden on Air Force One when he was still in the race to Detroit to campaign there and make a few comments. And when we got back on Air Force One to fly back to Washington, and we just it was me and a couple other union leaders just started talking about some things. He said to us that the worst mistake he made was not putting his name on the COVID checks after he got elected and sent them out like Trump did. You all would be surprised at how many people I have run into and talked to that thought Trump was going to give them another check because his name was on it. They had no idea that came from Congress. The Congress had to pay that. But Trump was smart enough to put his name in big letters across those checks. And so there's got to be more education in our communities. We're going to need those millionaires and billionaires that know what is happening in this country as far as our democracy is concerned. We're going to need their resources and to help educate the public about what's really taking place in this country. Because I am, for one, when I see the very things that my father and Dr. King and others fought for just being taken away, and less than half a year, DEI snapped programs for these kids, immigrants. I have immigrants that were legally here at one of my GE. I represent one of the GE plants in Kentucky, and they would just send letters several weeks ago saying you got 2 weeks to get out of this. These are CWA members. They said you have 2 weeks to get out of the country, or we're going to come round you up, you and your families, and fly you out. Now I filed a lawsuit, so I've slowed it down, right? But we're going to need some help fighting back on this. That's why I am a proponent of doing things early, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about when I'm actually officially sworn in, I guess, or however they handle this, in August at the DNC meeting. I am one who believes we need to start early now educating people in the communities and get them to understand clearly that everyone is going to be affected adversely by this bill, and we don't need to wait until 2 or 3 months before the election to engage people of color to get them to go out, and vote against this craziness that is taking place.
Well, it seems, Mike, and I agree with Mr. Cummings in terms of the focus and where the attention is taking place as far as social issues as opposed to working people issues. But the problem that we are having, going back to what you said the theme was, and why we're gathering around this as far as radio now and radio back then and television, and same thing about newspapers. It was about information. There's a vacuum. We're living in the age of information, and it's been that way since 1980. But people are being inundated with a lot of things that are not important, the kind of information that they need can be constructive. And that it's a lot of, social media, this and so forth and so on. And they're not hooked into or connected to information that's going to make a difference in their life. Unfortunately, we need to do something about Congress because Congress went to sleep when it came down to our president and the agenda that he had. I mean,
You're right.
the equality of the three branches of government, they're no longer existing. That's the information that everybody needs to be aware. It's a basic civic class that everybody needs to be aware of, and something needed to have been done with the situation we now find ourselves in, a president who is representing the billionaire class and has forgot about the folks who really put him in office. We really need to be aware of making sure that during the next few months, when we have elections, that we get people who are going to represent our interests, who's going to make sure that democracy does not fade in America, because it's really on a slippery slope right now. And we need to make sure that we get people in there that represent our interests. They don't have to be lawyers. They don't have to be Indian chiefs. They need to be people who are committed to taking care of the American people and democracy, because we just about lost that.
Well, that's one of the reasons that we wanted to do this podcast, Gary and I, I guess you could say it's not Neapolitan, but what you call it, anyway, so that we can invite guys like you, and especially you, Mr. Cummings, with your being the national president of the communications workers. That's a really big job, and you're the first man who happens to be Black to hold that position, and we want to be here for you. So anytime you need something, we can what we call it, do special editions or whatever, in order to make sure that we get the word out. Because unfortunately, when it comes to major media, majority media, it just depends on, heck, you can be the victim and they'll make you the criminal.
Right.
And it's sad. That's how important money is to some people. And Gary, I'm not talking about you. You're a good guy.
Thank you. What occurs to me when you see what's happening in New York for the mayoral race, and you have a charismatic, young, I mean, he's young. I think he's like 33 years old, running for mayor, and he's a Muslim. So you have a big Jewish community in New York. You wouldn't think that would work, and that may be why Cuomo is trying to stay in the race, thinking he might still be able to pull it off. But for the Democrats, they need the old guard to get away and let new young people that have charisma, that speak well, that can articulate, the issues in a believable way. It seems like we go from exaggeration to exaggeration on the left and the right, and nobody knows really what to believe or how it's really going to be affected. And those that can deliver the message the best way, that is convincing, that's sincere, that's honest, that has some good looks, that can have charisma, great personality, those people need to rise up in the Democratic Party to be able to lead the party, to be able to revamp and re-energize Democratic voters. If the big beautiful bill doesn't turn out to be a big bad bill, Democrats aren't going to be able to get any more votes, because then the people will not believe that it's true. So there's a lot of political capital based on this bill for Trump. If it's a good bill and people like it, great. He's going to continue to run the Republican Party, and he's going to get everything that he wants, as close to a dictatorship as our democracy will allow. And at the same time, if he doesn't, then there'll be sweeping changes in the House and the Senate, and a Democrat will have a much better chance of winning the presidency. So Gary, this bill, how well it works or doesn't work.
But Gary, I have to ask you a question when you talk about how someone defines whether it's good or not, because again, you're from the Caucasian part of the pocketbook. Okay, but we see it all the time. Billionaires spent billions of dollars to win this election for Donald Trump, and he lied I would say he lied his behind off, but he has such a big behind that's almost an impossibility. As much as he's lied, and he's. But anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. How do you defeat a media that seems to also has been bought out, sold out?
You have to have somebody that really can take Trump on, personality wise, and whether this is considered political talk. So apparently, it's okay for the left or the right to lie to the American people in order to get elected. And Trump still expects all these things that he's doing. They say is going to be so terrible for his base. He expects them just to understand, and he might be right. They might just understand and say, "This is the price I pay." I know when I had to pay more taxes when Reagan was president, I decided instead of being against it, I'm like, well, I'm going to support Reagan. And so, fine, if it costs me more taxes, people may feel that way about Trump too.
Okay, but Gary, think about this. The Republican Party is the pro-life party. They're against abortions and all that. In fact, they've done everything they can to get women away from having that choice. They're even against birth control. They're against same sex. They're against so much. Okay, but what happens when that person who may need that or want that is denied that, and that person has children, and find out that you don't want to support them after you have forced them to have a child? How
one person being victimized by that is not going to make any difference. It takes thousands of people to say this is not the direction we want to go. The majority has to rule, and right now Trump won the majority. He won the electoral votes and he won the popular vote. So he's either got to screw up and or another leader has to come along.
Oh, Gary, you do forget voter suppression. You do. And so he may have won.
Yeah, so that's why Trump says that he won the election. Biden didn't, because of voter fraud. So it goes on both sides. So,
I said suppression. I didn't say fraud.
Well, but people are. Yeah, well, I mean, the gerrymandering, all this other things people are going to do for what's best for them to get reelected. That's all the politicians worry about, is getting reelected. So the constituents, that's why they only had 2 people that voted against the big, beautiful bill that's a Republican. And Trump may go after them and get them to resign or get them out of. But one was a very heavily Democratic state. I think it was Virginia or something. And the guy couldn't politically be in favor of the bill or he might not get reelected. Trump probably understands that logic and probably is okay with it. The other guy, I don't know, maybe not so much. So it's, Trump is wielding a tremendous amount of power, and it's going to take another giant of a person to come along to equalize that or to be able to surpass him. And I don't think it's going to be Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi or anybody like that. It's got to be somebody we can't even think of. And if that doesn't happen, the Democrats aren't going to win.
Dr. J. Thomas Smith, want to say hello to him. He's been writing some notes. I don't know whether you all have seen them or not. I don't know what shows up on the screen, but what's up, Dr. J? Did you work with J. Gary?
I don't remember.
J. Thomas Smith?
I don't remember. We're talking 1984.
Oh, okay. Well, he's over at Magic too, and he's in line this year possibly to get into the Texas Radio Hall of Fame. Maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, Claude, James, Crystal is giving me the look like
it's time to go.
Yeah, but we can stay. This is free. Okay, well, we're trying to do that. But if y'all are ready to go, we'll go. If you want to talk a little bit more, hey, I'm Michael Harris. I'm at home on my phone.
I'm Gary Stone. I'm at home on my phone.
Let me say this before we leave. When it came to everything that folks have said generally about the Republican Party and the stance that they've taken, it goes back to the Tea Party and how that evolution evolved into where we are today. The Democratic Party is going to have to do a Tea Party. They're going to have to do something, a real soul-searching when it comes down to moving forward and exercising a strength that they've never done before. They have to do that, or they're going to lose their base. They're going to lose their base. Because that's exactly what happened with the Tea Party. They brought in Ted Cruz and a whole lot of other folks who began to look for a stronger advocacy on the part of the Republican Party that led us to where we are this moment. That's what the Democratic Party, they got to stop talking too much. They got to start doing some things. That's all they're doing. A lot of yap. And even when it came down to the assistant speaker of the House today, he talked for 8 hours and everybody was important. Good. He's a brilliant guy, but we got to do something. We got to stop just talking and being so kind to people. Although I believe in kindness, we got to take a different course going forward.
Listen, let me just say this. I was sitting in the executive board room of the AFL-CIO with about 30 union presidents. And we were debating the extension, I've forgotten what it's called, the reconciliation extension. Reconciliation extension. And we were told that we really need to talk to Schumer because there was a fear that he was not going to whip up the Senate the Democrats to try to stop it. And they could have stopped it. And then we got a call that Schumer's doing it. He's going to stop him. He's going to stop it from moving forward. So we don't have to worry about some of this craziness that Trump is going to try to do until September. We were just elated. Only to find out the next day that he folded.
Mm-hmm.
That he folded. He folded. And the explanation that he gave made absolutely no sense. No sense at all. Which has led us to in my opinion, what has happened, yesterday, and some other crazy things that are going to be taking place. And you're exactly right. I have, as a matter of fact, I've got a date on my calendar now to meet with Senator Schumer. I meet with him about every 2 or 3 months. And I met with Jeffries last week. And there's some meetings that are on my schedule to meet with them and some other organizations. And let me just be real frank with you. I better not use that term. Nothing happens in those meetings, but a bunch of folks just blowing off steam, and with no plan of action. We leave there with no direction, and I feel like all this is doing is just trying to set me up for a donation, because they can say that, Claude, we invited you to these meetings, and the next meeting or two, then someone else will be sent to make a pitch to me for some money. And listen, that stuff really happens. If you think that stuff don't happen, I got another story for you. Michael, this early part of this year, Sharpton was having a meeting. And it was a NAN event in Washington, D.C., the NAN breakfast that he has every year. And my comms staff called me and said, Al Sharpton's going to call to talk to you. And I said, well, that's interesting, And so we talked for about 15 to 20 minutes about things that are going on. And I kept waiting for the pitch. I said, well, damn. I forgot our phone said didn't ask for any money. That's unbelievable, because I thought sure he was going to ask for a check. But he didn't. But 2 days later, I got a call from his bag man. I understand you had a great conversation with President Sharpton, and blah 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 this blah blah that. We'd like to recognize you and point you out in the audience while we're there. We'd like you to consider a donation of $10,000. And I'm sick of that kind of stuff. in Washington, D.C. And I'm sick of it from the Democrats, because that's what really happens. Now, I'm not saying at all that as president they haven't helped us on some of my initiatives. They have. But they also understood clearly, as far as CWA is concerned, I've been one of the most, probably the most active, is what my staff is telling me, active president probably in 10 years. Okay, because I've been out all over the place. Jefferson told people, man, that guy from CWA, the new president of CWA, he's on fire. He's everywhere doing this. And I have been. I have been, because I just believe you need to get out and work. But I'm tired of them taking us for granted. Not just unions, but people of color, and how our neighborhoods, our communities were just absolutely ignored in this last presidential election. There's so much more could have been done with the money that they had. Bringing in religious organizations to get them mobilized, having forums with working people to just hear, what their issues were going into this election cycle. And they're going to have to start thinking. They're going to have to start thinking differently. They're going to have to start thinking differently if they're going to get control of this country again.
Yeah, James mentioned pouring money into the black media,
which they didn't do.
Yeah,
and
They didn't do.
They didn't do it either.
Listen, I can direct the money that I do give to the Senate Democratic Party. I do have a right to direct where some of that money wants to go. And since I couldn't get Colin to spend any money, I talked to him over and over again, and I've had a conversation with him recently too, to remind him why he lost. But I was able to direct a part of that $1 million that was still owed to the Senate Majority PAC. I directed, I think it was $300,000 to be spent on black media here in the state to help Colin, because he was doing nothing to help himself. Mm-hmm. But it was too late. It was too late.
Yeah, I remember when Lloyd Benson was running for vice president. He came in. We were over at the Astrodome Hotel up in the suite that that Hofheinz' dad owned, and they were going to spend $1 million to get out the black and the brown vote. Guess how much money was going to black and brown media out of that $1 million? $50,000. And I'm sitting up there with other black people, especially in radio and in print media, and I called him out on it. Said, how in the heck you gonna have $1 million to get out the black vote in Texas?
Yeah.
And you're only gonna spend $50,000 with us. You're talking about Austin, Dallas, and Houston, those major areas, and of course, including San Antonio and a few other places where there is, relatively large black and brown populations. But they were only going to spend $50,000 in black and brown media. The other $950,000 was going to TV and other radio and TV stations. And so I brought up the thing, and I had other African Americans standing up and telling Mr. Benson that don't pay any attention to him. He doesn't understand. And I don't understand what. You talk about $1 million to get out the black vote, but all the black and brown vote, but our people, our institutions are going to split $50,000 over 3 metropolitan areas. And the Chronicle and the Post, which was in existence then, and the major newspapers and the TV stations that we don't own, they're going to get $950,000 out of this $1 million. It just didn't make any sense. And I realized then that Democrats, they may act like they're your friends, but they're not your economic friends.
Yeah, well, we just need someone to speak up and speak out about it. Me and about 5 or 6, Michael, of the black presidents. So we have more black union presidents now in this country than ever before. And we did have a call with the DNC. We had a meeting, face-to-face meeting with the DNC chair and and other officers to impress upon them the importance of spending money. And they spent more than what they have in the past, but nothing like what is needed in order to mobilize our communities, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, and we're going to have to come up with ways of getting our businesses in the money-making business as well. I don't know why. Maybe it's just, do you think there's a big plot against Black economic development? Because you're seeing our garbage is not being picked up. We're getting enormous water bills for things that we have no control over. They are building highways and freeways through our communities. They're shutting down our schools. Are we the problem, or are there other factions going on, other actions going on? That's my last question.
Well, I'm not a believer that we are the problem. What we have to remember is this, as I said earlier, we got to get involved in the system. We got to get involved. And when they talk about, Gary was talking earlier in general about money and so forth, Black folks got a GNP of over $1.5 trillion. We got money. I know a lot of millionaires, a lot of them.
Right.
And so the idea that we are poor people, and so no, we got a lot of money. We own a lot of stocks and bonds and real estate and so forth. But we need to be more involved and stop shutting down. And stop saying, listen, if you're not sitting at the table, you're on the menu. And we've been on the menu too long when it comes down to participation in the government. And I'm not saying that we need to make any changes in terms of our support. I studied the issues. I've done that since I was 18 years old. Always voted. You don't have to tell me to vote. My daddy couldn't even read and write, and he went to vote every time there was an election. We need to get involved as a people. We're being left out.
Right. You're exactly right.
Yeah. Gary, you're being quiet. Are you hypnotized? We've got you hypnotized.
It's like that any government or branch of the government or businesses, they roll over people. They're the easiest to roll over. That gives them the least amount of resistance, right? So I'm afraid that minorities oftentimes fall in that category, even though the Black community is known for marching and all of that. But hey, they took down the Black Lives Matter street, and that Trump had them, take all of that down. So, I don't see people, I get maybe there was some resistance to that, but it still happened. So, unfortunately, minorities tend to be on the losing end, and they don't have the political, power to be able to push back, I guess, like maybe the Caucasian community can, or those representatives that are there, whether they're Democrat or Republican. So it's been a forever problem, and it seems like it's so much worse right now because of Trump wielding the power to do things, and he doesn't lose base support as a result of it. If anything, he may be gaining support. So he's encouraged to do even more, and that doesn't help minorities in this country. So on that note, we've been going almost an hour and a half. I don't think we're going to solve it much more than what we've talked about so far today.
Well, you can keep hope alive, Gary. Don't leave on a down note.
Well, if you find that to be something to be hopeful, then that's encouraging for me, because it doesn't affect me like it affects you and your neighbors and the other people in the Black community here in Houston and around the country. And it's a shame. It's terrible that it happens, but that's look, Bill Gates is giving away $200 billion. A lot of that, I think, is going to Africa and trying to help children over there not starve to death, and for answers to disease and such. Maybe he should spend that $200 million here in correcting what's in America. Oh, wait a minute. Now we're sounding like it's put America first, and then we're going to let kids starve in Africa. So you got to decide where is the money going to be spent that's going to have the best impact for the best lifestyle and best life experience for all of us. And there's always winners and losers and all of that. And unfortunately, oftentimes it's the minorities and low income that are the big losers, just as what we're saying about what's happening with Medicaid. If it's what the news media is saying. I don't know that we still have the full story on any of these headlines, and everybody wants to make it sound as bad as possible. I'm not for any of those things happening, but I don't think we know enough about what the real effect is going to be. So they'll all come out here in the next number of days and months and a year or so, and then we'll see what happens in the midterms.
How much money did Jeff Bezos spend on his wedding? Was it 50 mil?
Well, I've heard reports from 20 million to 50 million. And, Italy didn't, a lot of the people were protesting that. People in Barcelona protesting tourists. So it doesn't make me want to go to any of those places, even though the majority probably benefit from the economic input of that money. It probably was a boom for Florence to be able to have, or Venice, wherever he was, to have that amount of money come into that marketplace. So I'm sure the business people were happy. So there's good and bad to it all.
But 50 million?
Yeah, but he could spend 100 million. That's his money. Period.
Okay, but yeah, his money. But why is he? Okay, but why is he getting a tax cut?
He won't spend, that's his money.
Okay, no,
And,
you're misunderstanding, James.
I'm concerned about what's going on in our country and how we're having democracy being eroded in here when we do have three branches of government that are supposed to be equal. But the folks that we've elected are not doing their job. That's what I'm concerned about.
Okay.
All this stuff about what Trump is doing and all of that, most of it is just out of order, and it needs to be checked. And Congress needs to do its job, and they haven't done their job. Okay. And all the things that the president is doing as far as giving to the rich and taking away from the poor, and that's exactly what's happening. Because you see, the Bible has nothing to say about that. It says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul?
Okay.
That's exactly what we're seeing right here in America.
All right, but
folks who got money, they losing their soul.
Okay, but I think you're misunderstanding my point. My point was that if he can spend $50 million on a wedding, why the hell does he need a tax cut?
Well, I agree with you on that. There's no doubt about it. But again, I'm saying it's still his money.
Yeah, it's his money, but the government is taking away. They're going to let him keep more of his money while letting children who are economically, deprived starve. They're taking away health care.
Up as president in '97, he started that. He's coming back to finish what he started. He wants to still give his rich buddies a tax break. And I agree with you. He doesn't need a tax break. He needs to be contributing to the social programs in this country because we got a lot of problems. And, of course, everybody will let them make their own money. We can dig into our history and see how we got into this situation. It wasn't because everybody was brilliant and they made money or making money every day, but it's because of circumstances. And nobody wants to look in the mirror and face the circumstances that got us here. They want to take away, quote, DEI, and say, well, we've given them 50 years to catch up. Yeah, and 300 and some years, you've been leading everything. So I'll leave it alone. Well, I can get real radical about it.
Well, and all I want to do was to make sure that you understood that I wasn't. It's his money.
That's fine. I understand. But I'm saying that when it comes down to a man's money, he's got to be accountable for that. And whatever way he wants to spend it on whomever he wants to spend it on, that's his business.
Well, if I have a choice.
But again, I recognize the tax break that our president has really been pushing since '97. That's just unbelievable. And the people that are going to be impacted, and the idea of things having to line up course in order to make sure that 17 million people impacted by what's going on with Medicare are not, well, we'll find out later how many are going to be impacted. A lot of people are going to be impacted. They're not going to, old folks who are in the nursing home going to have to come out of that. And their relatives will not be able to pay that kind of money. And the same thing about when it comes down to Social Security and all of that. We haven't heard the last. We haven't heard the last of it. And Trump keeps saying, apparently he hadn't read the bill, the big, beautiful bill he's talking about. Social Security and Medicare will not be impacted. It's all in there.
A lie ain't nothing for a liar to
The
tell.
man has lied 30,000 times. And why would you believe a liar? That's what he is, a liar.
Well,
Anybody who follows him, nothing but a liar.
No, I think that, Mike, I don't have anything to say. I think they're exactly right. I think he's exactly right.
all right. Well, Alessandra is giving the thumbs up, so I guess that means that we can go. Gary, do we have your permission to leave?
Adios.
Yeah. Well, tell Claudia hi, and that we continue to pray for. Oh, you want to play us a song as we get out of here? No.
Still working on our theme song. I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah, give us a little something. Give us some little of the Gary stuff. Thank you, J. Thomas Smith. Thank you, Tom Overton, and anyone else who was watching on who communicated with us via Facebook Live. J. Thomas, you running for office or something? Got a lot of things over here. Hello there, Nicholas Hines. What's going on? And I want to give a shout out to Betty Fitzgerald, Sharon Robertson Jones up there in Panola County. And big old shout out to Simpson Epinoza. Simpson's Nigerian. I'm 90% Nigerian. Did y'all know that? That's why I'm so calm. So intelligent. And what else am I supposed to do? Huh? Oh, Mr. Claude Cummings, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. James White and Mr. Gary Stone, Mr. Michael Harris, Miss Alessandra Harris, and of course, the lovely Dietta Yvonne Sanders Harris, the woman who helped make me a man. Yeah. Love you much. Love all of you. Anything from any of you before we go?
Nope. See you guys.
All right. Well, we'll be back.
Same bad time, same bad channel.
Well, if something comes up, we'll put on our bat suits and do it early. Okay, Gary?
That's right. Never know when we're going to show up.
And Claude, anything that is coming up from the CWA, I'm just a phone call away. Claude.
I know it, Mike.
Right.
We will make sure and call you up.
All right. Well,
All
praise the Lord and pass the ammunition.
I know that's right. All right. Take care.
Thanks,
All
everybody. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. I don't have a fancy theme song yet. Maybe I need to pull out Johnny Nash or somebody.
We need that intro. I'm sure we have elements that we can build an intro and an outro with.
Well, what was the Beverly Hillbillies? We'll use you, and I'll be Ellie Mae. You'll be dead.
Got your recordings, right? We can find a studio somewhere, and we can make the intro and outro and play it on the show. But you got to have the elements, and I don't know what my elements are going to be.
Well, maybe we'll do I Spy.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Think about it. We'll figure it out.
Roots.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
God bless and keep you all.